Well, I'm here with Jack Goldsmith, who is the Henry Shattuck Professor at Harvard Law School and the author of Power and Constraint, The Accountable Presidency After 9/11, which has just come out. Jack, my understanding is this book kind of grows out of a very influential piece you did in the New Republic back in 2009, in which you argued that Obama, and this now is the conventional wisdom, but you were the first person to really make this case, basically adopted pretty much all of George W. Bush's counterterrorism policies. And the book sort of takes this further and deeper. So let's start, just tell us what your basic argument is, and then we'll break it down.
So the basic argument is that Obama did continue almost all of Bush's counterterrorism policies as they stood at the end of the Bush's term. The usual explanation for this is that the presidency's out of control, that Obama caved, he didn't have the courage of his convictions. I argue that he continued the policies basically because the system worked. That between 2002 and 2009, in an unprecedented way that is underappreciated, the checks and balances of the government, Congress, the courts, the press, and civil society pushed back against Bush and actually pushed him to a place where in January of 2009 there was kind of a consensus on counterterrorism policies that Obama continued. And then of course these checks continued with Obama when he got pushed back against on things like Gitmo, civilian trials, and the like. So the book is a story about how, the Constitution working well.
Now, you know, people on the left and the right who tend to have the loudest voices in our
Right.
System, a lot of them don't think the system did work. But your point is that there is a much larger, broader consensus on these issues. Is that right?
Yeah. So just take Gitmo, for example, which is we're not where the president wanted to be on Gitmo. Both houses of Congress, by bipartisan majorities, don't want Gitmo to be closed. The federal courts have engaged fully, which is what the civil liberties groups wanted them to do. And with the restrictions, they've approved what's going on and the detentions in Guantanamo Bay. Two presidents now, very different presidents, have engaged detention at Gitmo, and the American people support it by 70%. That's not the kind of consensus we have on any other issue in this country. And almost all the counterterrorism policies enjoy that kind of cross-branch bipartisan consensus, even something like targeted killing.
Well, targeted killings, let's talk about drones, because that's in some ways an interesting counterpoint. Because if you go back and look at what Barack Obama said during the campaign, he never opposed drones and targeted killings. Isn't that right?
Not only did he not oppose them, he got in trouble for saying he would be more aggressive than Bush was on that. In the campaign, he got in trouble. My point really is that Obama continued every trend that Bush had continued. And Bush, at the end of his term, was ramping up drones, and Obama accelerated that trend. So that was one area where Obama did not violate a campaign pledge. He promised he would go after al-Qaeda aggressively, including in Pakistan, and he did.
I got to ask you this, because you know, I don't think that Barack Obama has simply embraced the policies of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Some of these policies, like indefinite detention and others, he doesn't really like. He had to tolerate them because he didn't seem to have the political power to overcome them. So I have a question for you, which may be an unfair question. It's an alternative history question. What do you think Obama would have done had he been president on 9/11? What kind of policies do you think he would have put in place, and which ones would he not have put in place?
So the theme of my last book was that the problem with Bush was not what he did, but how he did it, and that Bush was unilateralist and unnecessarily so. I think that a President Gore or President Obama after 9/11, there would have been an imperative to take aggressive action, and he would have taken aggressive action. The distinctive feature of the Bush administration was this independent desire to expand executive power and not very adept. They were not very adept at explaining what they were doing. I think Obama would have done most of the things that Bush did, probably not as aggressive on interrogation. This is an impossible counterfactual.
Sure.
Probably not as aggressive on interrogation, but there would have been an aggressive presidency no matter who was the president. I do think that another presidency, besides the Bush administration, would have gone about it differently. They would have worked with Congress and the courts more. In fact,
which you argue is
hugely important. Hugely important. And in fact, even George W. Bush and Donald Rumsfeld in their memoirs sort of have mea culpa, saying our big mistake, this is one of my points that I've been harking on for years now, our big mistake was not working with other institutions. We shot ourselves in the foot. So I don't think, things would have been a little different, I think, but not largely different.
Okay, well, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank
It's
you.
a great book, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Dan.